You think you know what a shark is. A predator, a killing machine, an ancient creature frozen in time, so perfect that evolution had nothing left to improve. All three of those statements are wrong. The shark is not frozen. It has been changing continuously for 450 million years, producing forms so strange that no Hollywood screenwriter would dare invent them. It is not a killing machine. It is an engineering solution so precise, so metabolically elegant, so structurally efficient, that evolution has found no reason to discard it across nearly 500 million years of trying everything else. And it is not simply a predator. It is the greatest survivor in the history of vertebrate life. 5 mass extinctions. Each time, the planet lost the majority of everything that lived. Each time, the shark remained. That is not luck. That is architecture. And for the next 90 minutes, we are going to take that architecture apart and understand exactly what it is made of. Before we go any further, please subscribe to this channel. It costs you nothing, and it makes everything we do here possible. Thank you. Now, 450 million years. Let us start with the number itself, because it deserves more than a casual mention. 450 million years is not simply a large number. It is a span of time so vast that the human mind, evolved to track seasons and generations, cannot genuinely process it. But we can try to give it context. The dinosaurs, the animals that define our cultural image of prehistoric life, the creatures that Hollywood has made iconic, existed for approximately 180 million years before their extinction 66 million years ago. The entire dinosaur lineage, from the first small Triassic theropods to the last Cretaceous tyrannosaurs, fits inside the shark's history with room to spare. The sharks were already 250 million years old when the first dinosaur drew breath. Go further back. The first trees, the first woody plants tall enough to cast shade, appeared approximately 385 million years ago. Sharks predate trees by 65 million years. When the first shark was already an established presence in the Ordovician Ocean, the land surface of this planet had no trees, no forests, no shade. There were mosses, there were liverworts, growing a few centimeters above the rock. That was the entirety of the terrestrial vegetation. The continents were essentially bare stone, dusted with the most primitive land plants imaginable. And in the ocean, already a shark. Saturn's rings, for comparison, are estimated to have formed between 10 million and 100 million years ago, almost certainly after the first sharks appeared. The shark lineage is, in a very real astronomical sense, older than the rings of Saturn. This is the creature we are going to spend 90 minutes with. Not because it is dramatic, though it is. Not because it is dangerous, though some species are. But because the story of the shark is, in the most literal sense, the longest continuous vertebrate story on Earth. And like all the best stories, it is not a straight line from beginning to end. It is a story full of dead ends, of bizarre experiments, of near catastrophes, of recoveries that should not have been possible. It is a story that is, right now, at its most dangerous moment since the end of the Permian. And most people do not know it. Let us go back to the beginning, not to the first complete shark fossil, which comes later, to the actual beginning, to the moment the shark lineage first left a physical trace in the geological record. To understand what 450 million years actually means as a lived reality, as an ocean, as a world, as a set of environmental conditions, we need to stop and build the picture carefully. Because the Ordovician Ocean is not simply an older version of the ocean we know. It is a different planet wearing the same name. The atmosphere of the late Ordovician contains approximately 4,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide, roughly 10 times the pre-industrial concentration of the modern atmosphere. The greenhouse effect is pronounced but not catastrophic. The planet is warm, on average warmer than today, but the warmth is distributed differently. There are no permanent polar ice caps in the early Ordovician, and the shallow seas that spread across the continental margins are warm, clear, and extraordinarily productive. The sun is slightly fainter than it is today. The sun has been slowly brightening over the course of Earth's history, and 450 million years ago, it outputs approximately 96% of its current luminosity. The days are shorter. The Earth rotates faster in the Ordovician, producing a day of approximately 21 hours. The moon is closer, producing higher tides, more frequent and more powerful tidal flooding of coastal zones. The land is, by any reasonable standard, dead. Not entirely. There are microbial mats on wet rock surfaces. There are simple liverworts and mosses pressing close to the ground in moist environments near water. But there are no vascular plants, no roots penetrating rock, no organic soil in the modern sense, just crushed mineral substrate with a thin biological film on its surface in the most favorable locations. The continents are, from a distance, the color of rock: brown, gray, red. The colors of bare stone exposed to 4 billion years of weathering with no biological protection. The land smells of nothing. There is no decay, no soil chemistry, no rich organic odor. Just hot, dry rock and the wind carrying mineral dust. Everything that matters in the Ordovician is in the ocean. And the Ordovician Ocean is extraordinary. The Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event, the explosion of marine animal diversity that defines this period, has been running for tens of millions of years. The seas are full of life unlike anything that preceded them, and quite unlike anything alive today. Trilobites still dominate the benthos, the seafloor communities, in numbers and diversity that the Cambrian could only hint at. Nautiloid cephalopods, the ancestors of the modern nautilus, have produced forms ranging from small coiled shells to enormous straight-shelled predators, Cameroceras, reaching perhaps 6 meters in length, the apex predators of this ocean. Brachiopods filter the water in dense reef-like accumulations. Sea scorpions, eurypterids, move through the shallow waters, some of them genuinely large, genuinely threatening by any standard. Graptolites drift in the open water column in colonial chains, filtering organic particles from the currents. Into this ocean, this warm, productive, invertebrate-dominated ocean, comes the signal. Not a dramatic entrance, Not a predator bursting through a reef and scattering prey in panic. Just a small animal moving through the water column, its skin armored with tiny tooth-like scales. No jaw yet, possibly. No teeth as we understand them. Just the scales, the denticles, and a body plan that is already, in its fundamental commitment to cartilage over bone, making a choice that will define the next 500 million years. We do not know what it looked like. We cannot draw it from the fossil evidence available, but we can infer something about its ecology. An animal with dermal denticles, with skin structured to reduce drag and turbulence during active swimming, is an animal that swims actively. The denticles are not defensive armor in the way that a turtle's shell is defensive. They are hydrodynamic optimization. Each denticle is oriented in the direction of water flow, creating a surface that reduces the formation of turbulent vortices as water passes over the body. Modern shark skin, studied in fluid dynamics research, outperforms the smoothest man-made surfaces for drag reduction at comparable speeds. The Olympic swimsuits banned for producing unfair advantage in competition were banned specifically because they replicated the microstructure of shark skin. The 450-million-year-old denticles in the Harding sandstone carried the same hydrodynamic principle. This is already, in the Ordovician, a fast animal, or at least an animal committed to the engineering of speed. The Silurian period that followed the first extinction begins the next chapter. And it is in the Silurian, approximately 420 million years ago, that the fossil record offers something new. Not just scales, teeth. The first shark teeth from Silurian deposits in Siberia and Scandinavia are small, precise, and immediately recognizable as belonging to an active predator. They are multi-cusped, several pointed projections arranged on a single tooth base, and their microstructure shows the same vitridentine enamel analog that modern shark teeth carry. But their most significant characteristic is what they imply about the jaw. Teeth require a jaw. A jaw requires musculature. Musculature requires a skull. And a skull capable of powering a jaw, capable of bearing these teeth, is a skull that belongs to a predator actively pursuing and capturing prey, not filtering or suction feeding. The shark jaw is not a simple structure. It is one of the most mechanically sophisticated jaws in the vertebrate world, and its sophistication comes from an anatomical arrangement that no other vertebrate group has independently produced. In most jawed vertebrates, the upper jaw is fused to the skull. It does not move independently. In sharks, both jaws are capable of independent movement relative to the skull. The upper jaw can be protruded forward and downward during a bite, pushed out toward the prey item, creating a wider gape and allowing the shark to bite prey items that would be geometrically inaccessible to a fixed upper jaw. This jaw protrusion, combined with the continuous tooth replacement that replenishes functional teeth as they are shed, gives the shark a biting apparatus of extraordinary versatility and durability. The Silurian shark, armed with these first teeth and this first fully functional jaw, was something genuinely new in the ocean. The nautiloid apex predators, the great straight-shelled Camaraocaras, were waning. The Eurypterids were present but declining. The Silurian Ocean was a world in transition, its ecological hierarchies shifting, its apex predator niches contested. Into this transitional ocean, the shark jaw arrived. It arrived with teeth and the architecture to use them. And it would never leave. The late Ordovician period, approximately 450 million years ago. The planet at this moment is almost unrecognizable. The supercontinent Gondwana dominates the southern hemisphere, a vast landmass encompassing what will eventually become Antarctica, Africa, South America, Australia, and the Indian subcontinent, all fused together in a single enormous block of rock and bearing on its surface nothing but the most primitive plant life. The northern hemisphere is largely ocean, a vast, warm, shallow sea called the Iapetus Ocean, whose margins and basins teem with invertebrate life that has been diversifying explosively for the past 50 million years, in the event paleontologists call the Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event. It is in the sediments of this ocean, in what is now the state of Colorado in the United States, and in what is now Mongolia and Australia, that the first physical evidence of the shark lineage appears. Not a skeleton, not a jaw, not a tooth. What appears in the Harding Sandstone of Colorado and in the Carmichael Sandstone of Australia are tiny, almost invisibly small structures called dermal denticles. Dermal denticles. The name translates, roughly, as skin teeth. And that is precisely what they are. Tiny, tooth-like scales, each one a fraction of a millimeter in length, composed of the same material as teeth, dentine and enamel-like vitrodentine, embedded in the skin of an animal whose body, whose jaws, whose skeleton left no other trace. We have no teeth from these earliest sharks. We have no bones because sharks do not have bones, a fact whose significance we will return to. We have only these microscopic skin structures, preserved by geological accident in ancient sandstone, telling us that something with this particular biological signature was swimming in the Ordovician Ocean. And the biological signature is remarkable. Because when researchers analyze the microstructure of these Ordovician denticles, the internal arrangement of dentine tubules, the precise geometry of the mineralized tissue, they found that it matched, with extraordinary fidelity, the dermal denticles of modern sharks. Specifically, the denticle structure from the Harding Sandstone matches the fin scales of the modern small-spotted cat shark, Ciliorhinus canicula, a species you can find in the eastern Atlantic today. 450 million years of geological time separate these two animals. The microstructure of their skin scales is essentially identical. This is the first hint of what the shark story is really about. Not stasis. The sharks have not been unchanged, as we will see in extraordinary detail, but a set of core biological innovations so well suited to the demands of an aquatic predator's life that they have been retained, refined, and carried forward through everything the planet threw at the lineage. The denticle is one of those innovations. It will appear again and again throughout this story. But who made these first denticles? What did the animal look like? Here, the fossil record offers its first frustrating silence. We have no body fossils from the earliest sharks. We have no complete specimen. We have scales in rock and inference. The animal that wore those scales may have been toothless, a jawless or near-jawless filter feeder or suction predator, quite unlike the image the word shark conjures. It may have been small. It may have been ecologically marginal in the Great Ordovician Sea, a minor character in an ocean dominated by nautiloid cephalopods, trilobites, and brachiopods. It does not matter. It existed. The lineage had begun. The Ordovician ended approximately 443 million years ago in catastrophe. The late Ordovician mass extinction, the first of the 5 great extinctions the shark lineage would survive, was caused by a rapid glaciation, possibly triggered by the weathering of newly uplifted mountain ranges, which drew down atmospheric carbon dioxide and cooled the planet severely. Sea levels dropped dramatically as water locked up in the expanding ice sheets. The warm, shallow seas that had supported the great Ordovician biodiversification drained or cooled. Approximately 85% of all marine species went extinct. The shark lineage survived. It was young, ecologically flexible, probably not yet the dominant predator in any environment. But it survived. Into the Silurian period, the geological period that followed the Ordovician extinction, spanning approximately 443 to 419 million years ago, the shark lineage carried its denticles forward. And in Silurian rocks from Siberia and Scandinavia, we find the next advance in the fossil record, the first shark teeth. Not just scales anymore, but actual teeth. The first evidence of the jaw mechanism that will define the shark as an apex predator for the remainder of its history. The significance of the jaw cannot be overstated. The jawless fish. The agnathons, represented today by lampreys and hagfish, had existed for tens of millions of years before the first jawed vertebrates appeared. They were successful in their own way, and certain lineages persist to the present. But the jaw represents a fundamental restructuring of what an animal can do in the water. A jaw is a precision tool for capturing, processing, and consuming prey that no suction or filter mechanism can approach in versatility. A jawed predator can pursue, grip, tear, and swallow prey items of a size and type that a jawless animal cannot access. The evolution of the jaw opened ecological space that had not previously existed for vertebrates. The sharks were among the first vertebrates to fully exploit this space. And the teeth they evolved to arm their jaws were, from the very beginning, something remarkable. Shark teeth are not like mammalian teeth. They are not set in sockets with roots embedded in bone. They grow in conveyor belt rows, multiple rows of teeth at different stages of development, with new teeth continuously forming behind the functional front row and moving forward to replace teeth that are shed. A single shark, over its lifetime, may produce and shed tens of thousands of individual teeth. A great white shark replaces its functional teeth approximately every 1 to 2 weeks. The teeth are not permanent biological investments. They are disposable tools, continuously renewed. This is why the shark fossil record, thin as it is in terms of body fossils, is extraordinarily rich in teeth. Every shark that ever lived shed teeth constantly throughout its life. Those teeth, composed of dense mineralized tissue, preserve far better than cartilage. They accumulate in ocean sediments in enormous quantities. In certain geological formations, the Miocene Age Calvert Formation of Maryland, for example, shark teeth can be found by the thousands in a single exposure of sediment. The teeth of a species are its most reliable record. The body is almost never preserved. The teeth tell the story. And what do the teeth tell us about the Silurian shark? They tell us that the jaw mechanism was already sophisticated. The teeth from Silurian deposits are small, multi-cusped, designed for gripping rather than cutting. The teeth of an animal pursuing other fish, holding prey against the pressure of the water column, preventing escape. The cutting blade, the serrated triangular tooth design that defines the great white shark and the terror it inspires, comes later. The earliest shark teeth are elegant but modest. They are the tools of a predator still finding its place in the ecosystem. The next major advance comes in the Devonian period, which spans from approximately 419 to 359 million years ago. The Devonian is sometimes called the Age of Fishes, and with good reason. The seas of the Devonian are extraordinary, diverse, productive, globally distributed, and dominated by an ecological complexity that the Silurian could not match. It is in the Devonian that we first encounter a shark that looks unmistakably like a shark. Cladocelaceae, found in the Cleveland Shale of Ohio, one of the most productive Devonian fossil deposits in the world. Cladocelaceae is approximately 380 million years old. It is 1 to 2 meters long, with a few specimens reaching 2.5 meters. It has a streamlined fusiform body, the classic torpedo shape that every subsequent shark will either inherit or modify. It has 2 dorsal fins, paired pectoral and pelvic fins, and a heterocircle tail. A tail in which the upper lobe is larger than the lower, with the vertebral column extending into the upper lobe, generating the lift and thrust that the shark's negatively buoyant body requires. Stand Cladocelaceae next to a modern blue shark, and you would recognize the family resemblance immediately. The body plan, the fundamental architecture that defines a shark as a shark, was established 380 million years ago, and it worked so well that the basic outline has never been abandoned. Not because sharks stopped evolving. They continued to evolve in extraordinary and sometimes bizarre ways. But the core design, streamlined body, cartilaginous skeleton, multiple tooth rows, heterocircle tail, paired fins for precise maneuvering. This template was set in the Devonian and has proven over nearly 400 million years of continuous testing to be essentially optimal for a fast, active, ocean-going predator. There is one curious detail about Cladocelaceae that paleontologists have noted with interest. The male specimens show no evidence of claspers, the paired intromittent organs that male sharks use for internal fertilization in all modern species. This suggests that Cladocelaceae may have reproduced differently, possibly through external fertilization, like most bony fish. Internal fertilization, with the female retaining developing embryos or egg cases, is one of the shark lineage's most important reproductive innovations, but it appears to have come later. Clado Solar may represent a transitional moment after the body plan was established, but before all the reproductive machinery of the modern shark was in place. The Devonian ended in another catastrophe, the late Devonian extinction, one of the most prolonged and devastating in Earth history, which unfolded over several million years, approximately 375 to 359 million years ago. At least 75% of all species on Earth went extinct, including most of the armored fish, the placoderms, that had dominated the Devonian seas alongside the sharks. The placoderms were remarkable animals, some reaching enormous size, and their sudden disappearance from the fossil record after the Devonian is one of the great losses in the history of vertebrate life. For the sharks, the late Devonian extinction was both a crisis and an opportunity. Many early shark lineages disappeared. But the extinction of the placoderms, those armored giants that had occupied the apex predator niches in many Devonian seas, opened ecological space that the sharks were positioned to fill. What followed was one of the most dramatic episodes of evolutionary diversification in the entire history of the class. Before we enter the Carboniferous, we need to understand what the late Devonian extinction actually destroyed, because the scale of that destruction is what makes the Golden Age possible. The placoderms, the armored fish that dominated Devonian seas, were not a minor group. They were the vertebrate success story of their age, diversifying into hundreds of species across every marine and freshwater environment on Earth, producing body forms ranging from small bottom-feeding detritivores to Dunkleosteus, an apex predator reaching perhaps 6 meters, armored in interlocking plates of dermal bone, with a bite force estimated at 8,000 newtons, one of the most powerful bites of any fish that ever lived. Dunkleosteus did not have teeth in the conventional sense. It had sharpened bony plates that functioned as self-sharpening blades, resharpening themselves with each bite by the contact between upper and lower plates. It was, in its own domain, extraordinary. And then it was gone. The late Devonian extinction eliminated the placoderms entirely. Every species, every lineage, the entire clade, one of the most successful vertebrate radiations of the Paleozoic, vanished from the fossil record at the Devonian Carboniferous boundary and never returned. The ecological space they occupied, the large-bodied apex predator niches in both open ocean and coastal marine environments, was suddenly, geologically, instantaneously vacant. The sharks were ready. The Carboniferous Ocean is warmer than the Devonian, more extensive, its shallow seas spreading further across the low-lying continents as sea levels rise. Atmospheric oxygen reaches levels considerably higher than today, possibly 35%, compared to the modern 21%, driven by the vast coal swamp forests that are simultaneously building the coal deposits that will power the Industrial Revolution 350 million years later. High oxygen concentrations affect marine productivity, affect the metabolic capacity of active predators, affect the size that animals can efficiently reach. The Carboniferous Ocean is, in a sense, supercharged. Into this supercharged ocean, freed from placoderm competition, the sharks radiate. And they radiate not toward a single optimal design, but outward in every direction, exploring the full morphological space available to a cartilaginous predator with a versatile jaw and a body plan that had already proven in the Devonian capable of reaching 2 meters and beyond. We have mentioned Stethecanthus, Helicoprion, and Falcatus. But the Carboniferous produced others equally strange. Adestus, sometimes called the scissor-tooth shark, had teeth that did not shed in the conventional conveyor belt pattern, but instead accumulated in a single midline series in both upper and lower jaws, creating 2 curved rows of enlarging teeth that projected forward and outward like the blades of enormous scissors. The animal opened its mouth, and the projecting tooth rows spread apart, then closed together, shearing whatever was caught between them. The largest Adestus teeth are over 5 centimeters tall. The animal itself may have reached 6 meters. It is preserved only in teeth. The body, cartilaginous and perishable, left no trace. But the teeth alone are enough to make clear that this was a predator of serious capability and utterly alien design. Cobolodus had enormous eyes relative to its head size, suggesting a deep water or low-light specialist, hunting in the dim zones below the sunlit surface layer. Shark eyes, even in the Carboniferous, were already sophisticated. The tapetum lucidum, the reflective layer behind the retina that doubles the effective light gathering by reflecting light back through the photoreceptors a second time, appears to be an ancient feature of the Chondrichthyan lineage. It is the same structure that makes cat's eyes glow in the dark. In a deep-water shark, it amplifies the already dim bioluminescent light of the mesopelagic zone into a usable visual signal. Orthocanthus, a freshwater shark of the Carboniferous coal swamps, represents perhaps the most unexpected habitat expansion in early shark history. While most sharks are, and have always been, marine, Orthocanthus colonized the freshwater swamps and river systems of the Carboniferous forests with apparent success, reaching up to 3 meters in length. It had a distinctive spine projecting from the back of the skull, possibly a defensive structure, possibly a display organ, and teeth with multiple lateral cusps arranged in a trident pattern, suited for gripping the large amphibians and early amniotes that lived alongside it in the coal swamps. A shark hunting in a swamp forest among the ancestors of all land vertebrates. The lineage had reached everywhere. The Carboniferous lasted approximately 60 million years. 60 million years of this extraordinary diversity, hundreds of species, dozens of body plans, the full range from open ocean apex predators to freshwater ambush hunters, from deep water visual specialists to midwater filter feeders, whose gill rakers were already, in some lineages, beginning to approach the complexity of modern filter-feeding sharks. The ocean was not simply an environment the shark inhabited. It was a problem the shark solved, repeatedly, from every angle, in every way available to a vertebrate with a cartilaginous skeleton and a replaceable jaw. And then the Permian followed the Carboniferous, bringing 299 to 252 million years ago of continued diversification. continued exploration, continued refinement. And then, at the end of the Permian, the world tried to end. The Carboniferous period, spanning approximately 359 to 299 million years ago, is known in paleontology as the Golden Age of Sharks. The name is entirely deserved. Free from the competitive pressure of the placoderms, with warm, productive seas covering much of the globe in a greenhouse climate, and with the ecological disruption of the Devonian extinction creating open niches in every marine environment, the sharks radiated into an astonishing diversity of forms. Forms that bear almost no resemblance to anything we call a shark today. Consider Stethacanthes. This small shark, roughly 1 meter long, carried on its back a structure that has no equivalent in any living fish. The first dorsal fin was modified into a flat, anvil-shaped platform, covered on its top surface with enlarged denticles identical to those on the top of the shark's head. The function of this structure is still debated. It may have been a display organ for mate attraction. It may have been used in predator deterrence, presenting a confusing visual signal to anything approaching from above. It may have served some other function entirely. We do not know. What we know is that it existed, that it was fully formed and complex, and that Stethacanthes appears to have been relatively common in certain Carboniferous seas. Nature tried this experiment. It ran for millions of years. Then it ended. Consider Helicoprion. Helicoprion is the shark that no textbook can adequately prepare you for. Helicoprion possessed in its lower jaw a spiral whorl of teeth, a circular saw arrangement in which old teeth were not shed, but instead rotated inward and back as new teeth grew at the front, creating an ever-expanding spiral of accumulated dentition that could, in the largest specimens, reach 60 centimeters in diameter. For over a century after Helicoprion was first described in the 1890s, paleontologists argued about where exactly in the animal this structure was located. Some placed it at the front of the snout, like a circular saw blade projecting forward. Some placed it entirely internally. The correct answer, worked out through advanced imaging of specimens in the early 21st century, is that it sat in the lower jaw, rotating like a conveyor of blades as the animal closed its mouth on soft-bodied prey like cephalopods. Helicoprion was not a small animal. Estimates based on tooth whorl size suggest that the largest individuals may have reached 7 or 8 meters, a significant predator in any sea. It survived not just through the Carboniferous, but through the Permian and into the early Triassic, making it one of the longer-lived shark genera in the fossil record. And it looked like nothing that has existed before or since. Consider Falcatus, in which the males carried a long, curved spine projecting forward from the back, curving over the head. The spine is thought to have functioned in sexual display or combat between males. The females lack it entirely. We have Carboniferous specimens of Falcatus preserved in such exquisite detail that a male and female have been found together. The male's spine positioned over the female's head in what appears to be a mating posture, preserved in limestone 320 million years old. The Carboniferous gave us all of this. A world of sharks so diverse, so experimentally varied, so free to explore the morphological space available to a cartilaginous predator in a warm, productive ocean, that the period stands as the most creatively extravagant chapter in the entire history of the lineage. The ocean was, in a very real sense, a laboratory, and the sharks were running every experiment simultaneously. And then came the end of the Permian. And then came the end of the Permian, the worst event in the history of life on Earth, whose mechanism and consequences are documented in detail in another episode of this series. For the sharks, the question is simple. Did they survive it? What happened to the sharks? The sharks suffered catastrophically. The diverse Carboniferous and Permian shark fauna was decimated. The bizarre experimental forms of the Golden Age, the Stethocanthus lineage, the Helicoprion and its relatives, many of the most morphologically distinctive Paleozoic sharks, disappeared at or near the end-Permian boundary. The lineage was not destroyed, but it was reduced to a shadow of its Carboniferous diversity. Entering the Triassic, the sharks were ecologically diminished, species poor, geographically restricted relative to their Permian distribution. And yet they recovered. Within the Triassic, new shark lineages diversified to fill the ecological space that the extinction had vacated. By the Jurassic, the sharks were once again diverse, globally distributed, and ecologically significant. The recovery was not instantaneous. Nothing about biological recovery from a mass extinction is instantaneous at geological timescales, but it was complete. The architecture was intact. The lineage endured. The Siberian traps began erupting approximately 252 million years ago. The eruption was not a single event. It was a sustained volcanic outpouring, covering an area of approximately 2 million square kilometers in what is now Siberia, releasing lava volumes estimated at 1 to 4 million cubic kilometers over a period of approximately 1 million years. 1 million years is an eye blink in geological terms. In biological terms, it was the longest sustained catastrophe the ocean had ever experienced. The carbon dioxide released by the eruptions, augmented by the burning of the coal deposits that the Carboniferous forests had laid down, ignited by the volcanic intrusions, drove ocean temperatures upward by perhaps 10 degrees Celsius in the worst affected regions. Ocean chemistry changed catastrophically. The ocean acidified as dissolved carbon dioxide formed carbonic acid, attacking the calcium carbonate shells of the foraminifera, the brachiopods, the mollusks, the reef-building organisms that formed the structural foundation of marine ecosystems. At depth, oxygen levels collapsed. The warmer the water, the less dissolved oxygen it can hold. And as deep ocean circulation slowed under the thermal stratification, the deep ocean became anoxic. The hydrogen sulfide produced by anaerobic bacteria in oxygen-depleted bottom waters rose into shallower zones, poisoning organisms that had never evolved resistance to it. The food web collapsed from the bottom. The phytoplankton, the photosynthetic microorganisms that produce the organic carbon that feeds every marine food chain, crashed under the combined assault of acidification, temperature stress, and the disruption of nutrient cycling. Without phytoplankton, the zooplankton that fed on them crashed. Without zooplankton, the filter feeders crashed. Without filter feeders, the predators that fed on them crashed. Each trophic level collapsed in sequence, like floors of a building after the foundation fails. In the deepest, most oxygen-depleted regions, nothing survived. In the shallower waters, only the most tolerant, the most flexible, the most physiologically robust organisms persisted. What did the sharks face in this ocean? The picture from the fossil record is one of catastrophic loss. The rich Permian shark fauna, the diverse descendants of the Carboniferous Golden Age, disappears largely from the record at the end-Permian boundary. Many of the Paleozoic shark lineages that had diversified so spectacularly through the Carboniferous and Permian left no Triassic descendants. The tooth record, thin as it always is for sharks, becomes dramatically thinner across the boundary. Where Permian deposits yield diverse assemblages of shark teeth representing multiple lineages and body plans, the earliest Triassic deposits yield almost nothing. A few lineages, a fraction of the former diversity. The shark lineage passed through the eye of a needle. What survived? The survivors share certain characteristics. They appear to have been ecological generalists, not specialized for a single prey type or a single depth zone, but capable of switching prey and habitat as conditions changed. They appear to have been tolerant of a wider range of ocean chemistry than the most vulnerable lineages. They may have included species capable of some degree of osmoregulatory flexibility, able to move between marine and brackish or even freshwater environments as coastal ocean chemistry deteriorated, as the freshwater sharks of the Carboniferous had demonstrated was physiologically possible. And they were almost certainly smaller-bodied on average than the Permian apex predators. Large-bodied apex predators are always the most vulnerable in mass extinctions. They have the largest energy requirements, the smallest populations, the slowest reproductive rates. Small-bodied generalists survive. The early Triassic is one of the bleakest intervals in the fossil record. The ocean ecosystem did not simply lose species. It lost its structural complexity. The reefs were gone, dissolved by acidification. The diverse benthic communities were gone. The clear trophic hierarchies of the Permian Ocean, the layered food webs from phytoplankton to apex predator, were replaced by a simplified, stressed, low-diversity system that persisted for millions of years before recovery began. The surviving sharks swam through an ocean impoverished beyond anything the lineage had previously encountered, and they rebuilt. Slowly, haltingly, generation by generation, the shark lineage diversified from its Permian survivors into the ecological vacuum of the recovering Triassic Ocean. New species appeared. New lineages branched. The Hybodontiforms, a diverse group of sharks that would dominate much of the Mesozoic, diversified rapidly through the Triassic, filling the apex predator niches in recovering marine ecosystems. By the Middle Triassic, approximately 240 million years ago, shark diversity was recovering toward pre-extinction levels. By the Late Triassic, the ocean was once again a place where multiple shark lineages competed, diversified, and tested the limits of what a cartilaginous jaw and a replaceable tooth row could accomplish. The end-Permian extinction did not break the shark lineage, but it came closer than anything before or since. The 450 million year thread had frayed to a few strands. It held. And from those few strands, the entire Mesozoic shark fauna was rewoven. The Mesozoic era, the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous, spanning approximately 252 to 66 million years ago, was the age of the dinosaurs on land and the marine reptiles in the sea. And in that same sea, the sharks were present throughout, evolving new forms adapted to the competitive pressures of a marine world. That included, for the first time, large, intelligent reptilian predators. Ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and eventually mosasaurs occupied apex predator niches in Mesozoic seas alongside the sharks, in competition or in a complex predator-prey relationship that we are only beginning to reconstruct from the fossil record. The Jurassic saw the appearance of forms closer to modern sharks. Hybodont sharks, a diverse group that spanned from the Permian to the Cretaceous, were among the dominant sharks of the Mesozoic and show a transitional anatomy between the Paleozoic sharks and the modern selachimorphs. By the Cretaceous, several of the modern shark orders were already present: the hexanchids, the squalids, the orectolobiforms. The lineage was not static during the Mesozoic. It was continuously producing new variants, testing new ecological strategies, diversifying in parallel with the reptilian predators that shared its ocean. And then, 66 million years ago, the Chicxulub impactor, the asteroid that ended the Cretaceous, the event that killed the non-avian dinosaurs, the mosasaurs, the plesiosaurs, the ammonites, and approximately 3/4 of all species on Earth. What happened to the sharks at the KPG boundary is one of the more nuanced stories in this entire history. The sharks did not pass through the end Cretaceous extinction unscathed. Research examining shark tooth morphology across the KPG boundary, published in the journal PLOS Biology, and representing the most comprehensive analysis to date of shark diversity across this event, found that the extinction selectively targeted specific lineages. The apex predatory lamniform sharks, particularly the anacoricids, the dominant large-bodied Cretaceous lamniforms, suffered significant losses. The triangular, blade-like teeth of these large apex predators are conspicuously less diverse in Paleogene sediments than in equivalent Cretaceous deposits. But other shark groups, the hexanchids, the squalids, the triachid carchariniforms, show virtually no change across the boundary. These smaller, deeper water, or more ecologically generalist sharks passed through the KPG extinction with what appears, from the tooth record, to be minimal disruption. They were not competing for the prey that disappeared with the extinction. They were not dependent on the surface water productivity that collapsed in the impact winter. They were eating fish, and fish, though affected, survived. They were living in deep water, below the photosynthetic zone, in environments that the impact winter could not reach as immediately. They were generalists in a world where specialists were dying. The KPG extinction did not end the shark lineage. In some ways, by eliminating the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, the large marine reptile predators that had competed with sharks for apex predator niches throughout the Cretaceous, it opened ecological space. In the Paleogene, certain shark lineages diversified rapidly, growing larger, occupying the niches vacated by the extinct marine reptiles. The apex predator niche in the open ocean, contested between sharks and marine reptiles for the entire Mesozoic, now belonged entirely to the sharks. And from that Paleogene diversification came the most famous animal in the history of the shark lineage. The animal that, even today, dominates our imagination, fills our nightmares, and generates more documentary television footage than any other marine predator. Otodus megalodon. The megatooth sharks, the Otodus lineage, represent a sequential series of increasingly large lamniform sharks, tracing from Otodus obliquus in the early Paleogene through several intermediate species to Otodus megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. The lineage spans approximately 50 million years. It represents one of the most dramatic size increases in vertebrate evolutionary history. A gradual, continuous increase in body size and tooth dimensions, from a relatively modest Paleogene lamniform to an animal of almost incomprehensible scale. How big was Megalodon? This question has been debated for as long as paleontologists have been finding Megalodon teeth, which is to say, for the better part of 2 centuries. Because no complete Megalodon skeleton has ever been recovered, cartilage does not preserve well, and the only common Megalodon fossils are teeth and occasional vertebrae. Every size estimate is an inference, a calculation based on the relationship between tooth dimensions and body length extrapolated from living sharks. For decades, the standard estimate placed Megalodon at approximately 15 meters maximum length, based on comparisons with the great white shark. But in 2025, a study co-authored by 29 fossil shark experts and published in the journal Paleontologia Electronica proposed a significant revision. The key piece of evidence was a nearly complete fossilized vertebral column from Belgium, approximately 11 meters long, combined with a set of vertebrae from Denmark measuring 23 centimeters in diameter, the largest shark vertebrae ever found. If those Danish vertebrae represented the largest vertebrae in the body, then that individual may have reached approximately 24.3 meters in total length, longer than a blue whale, approximately 4 times the length of the largest recorded great white shark. But the 2025 study changed not just the number, it changed the shape. Previous estimates had assumed Megalodon was built like an enormous great white shark, stocky, barrel-chested, built for ambush. The new analysis, comparing the proportions of Megalodon's neurocranium and caudal fin to those of other large aquatic animals, whale sharks, basking sharks, sperm whales, found that gigantic aquatic vertebrates are consistently constrained by hydrodynamics toward more elongated, slender body forms. A stocky body becomes hydrodynamically inefficient at very large sizes. Megalodon, the study proposed, was built not like a great white, but like a lemon shark or a large whale, long, slender, built for efficient cruising rather than explosive ambush. This matters for how we understand megalodon's behavior and ecology. A cruising predator covers more ocean. It covers more ocean at lower metabolic cost. It is not waiting behind a rock for a seal to swim past. It is ranging across enormous distances, hunting the large marine mammals, whales, dolphins, dugongs, that formed its primary prey during the Miocene and Pliocene. An individual of 24 meters, weighing up to 94 tons by the study's estimates, consuming perhaps 100,000 kilocalories per day, 20 times the daily energy requirement of an adult great white shark, needed to kill regularly and efficiently. It needed a large hunting range and large prey. And here is the detail that makes the 2025 study most extraordinary. At birth, a megalodon pup may have been approximately 3.9 meters long, roughly the size of an adult great white shark, born already at the size of one of the largest living predatory sharks. The authors of the study noted, with admirable scientific restraint, that it was entirely possible that megalodon pups were already capable of taking marine mammals shortly after birth. Megalodon is not closely related to the great white shark. This is a point that popular culture consistently gets wrong, and that paleontologists have been correcting for decades. The great white shark evolved from broad-toothed mako sharks during the Middle Eocene, approximately 45 million years ago, independently on a completely different branch of the lamniform family tree. Megalodon and the great white are not ancestor and descendant. They are distant cousins who occupied similar ecological roles and may have been direct competitors. The great white's ancestors were present in Miocene seas at the same time as Megalodon. They were hunting some of the same prey. The relationship between them was almost certainly one of competition, and the decline of Megalodon may have been influenced, in part, by competition with the ancestors of the great white, smaller, more agile, more efficient hunters of the medium-sized marine mammals that Megalodon also depended on. Why did Megalodon go extinct? This is one of the most actively debated questions in vertebrate paleontology, and the honest answer is that we do not have a definitive explanation. The most recent evidence places the extinction at approximately 3.6 million years ago during the Pliocene. The timing correlates with several significant events. Global cooling was underway. The planet was moving toward the glacial cycles that would define the Pleistocene, and the warm, productive, shallow seas that Megalodon preferred were contracting. The great whales, particularly the large baleen whales that were migrating to newly productive polar seas as upwelling systems intensified, were concentrating their populations at high latitudes, in cold waters where Megalodon may not have been able to thermoregulate effectively. The prey was moving away. Simultaneously, the ancestral great white shark and other competitors were diversifying and occupying medium predator niches that were becoming more productive. The most likely explanation is not a single cause, but a convergence. Climate change contracting Megalodon's preferred habitat, prey redistribution moving its food supply out of reach, and biological competition intensifying in the niches that remained accessible. Megalodon did not go extinct because it was a flawed design. It went extinct because the world changed faster than a very large, very specialized predator could adapt. The most powerful predator in the history of vertebrate life was defeated not by a rival but by geography and temperature. After Megalodon, the sharks of the Neogene and Quaternary were not diminished. They were diversified. The modern shark fauna, the approximately 540 species recognized by current taxonomy, organized into 8 orders, represents one of the most ecologically diverse groups of marine vertebrates on the planet. From the whale shark, Rhincodon typus, at up to 18 meters, the largest fish in the ocean, filtering plankton through gill rakers that strain the water with the efficiency of a biological net, to the dwarf lantern shark, Etmopterus perry, at roughly 20 centimeters, one of the smallest vertebrates in the deep ocean, bioluminescent, hunting invertebrates in permanent darkness at depths of 400 meters. From the hammerhead sharks, the youngest major shark group, evolving only approximately 23 million years ago, whose extraordinary cephalofoil head provides enhanced electroreception and hydrodynamic lift in a form so strange that it almost seems like a separate experiment, to the wobbegong sharks of the Indo-Pacific, flat and camouflaged, lying motionless on the seafloor, waiting for fish to swim within striking range, looking less like a shark than like a patterned carpet. The modern shark is not one animal. It is 540 solutions to the problem of surviving in water, evolved from one lineage over 450 million years. The hammerhead deserves a special moment because it illustrates something important about what the shark story actually is. The hammerhead's cephalofoil, the laterally extended head, is not an ancient structure. It is a recent innovation, appearing in the fossil record only 23 million years ago in the Miocene. The hammerhead is the youngest major shark lineage. It is an experiment still underway, and the cephalofoil, studied in living hammerheads, turns out to serve at least 3 distinct functions simultaneously. It spaces the eyes and nostrils farther apart, increasing the animal's binocular overlap for 3-dimensional vision, and its stereo olfaction for tracking scent gradients in the water column. It is packed with ampullae of Lorenzini, the electroreceptive organs that all sharks carry, but that the hammerhead has extended across a wider surface area than any other species, giving it the most sensitive electromagnetic detection system of any known animal. And it functions as a hydrodynamic surface, generating lift that allows the hammerhead to execute tighter turns than a conventional shark body plan permits. The ampullae of Lorenzini are worth dwelling on, because they represent one of the shark lineage's most ancient and most extraordinary sensory innovations. These are small, gel-filled pores distributed across the shark's head, connected to sensory cells that detect weak electrical fields in the water. Every living organism generates a weak bioelectric field. The electrical activity of muscle contractions, nerve impulses, and ion exchange across cell membranes creates a field that extends into the surrounding water. The shark's ampullae can detect fields as weak as 5 billionths of a volt per centimeter, a sensitivity so extreme that a shark can locate a flatfish buried in sand, completely invisible, detectable only by the weak electrical field generated by its beating heart and gill movements. The shark can find a prey animal it cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot hear, purely by reading the electrical signature of its physiology. This system almost certainly predates the teeth, the jaw, and possibly the body plan we associate with modern sharks. It may be among the oldest biological sensors carried by the vertebrate lineage, and it is still present, still functional, still providing a sensory channel unavailable to virtually every other animal in the ocean, in the sharks alive today. The lateral line, the mechanosensory system that detects pressure changes and water movement across the shark's body surface, is equally ancient and equally extraordinary. The lateral line allows a shark to detect the pressure wave generated by a fish swimming at a distance, to feel the disturbance in the water created by prey movement, predator approach, or the structural complexity of a reef environment. It is, in effect, a distributed tactile sense extending across the entire body surface. Add the olfactory system, 1 part per billion sensitivity, documented in earlier pages, and you have the most complete sensory array of any ocean predator that has ever existed. And then there is the skeleton, the absence of bone. This is the structural decision that defines the entire class Chondrichthyes, the cartilaginous fishes, and it is a decision whose consequences have shaped everything about how the shark lineage evolved, how it fossilizes, and how it functions. Cartilage is not simply bone that did not finish developing, as it is in mammalian embryos. Shark cartilage is a specific, highly evolved biological material, reinforced in stressed areas with a mineralized layer called tesserae, microscopic hexagonal tiles of calcium phosphate that provide rigidity where needed while maintaining flexibility elsewhere. The result is a skeleton that is simultaneously lighter than bone, and in key structural elements comparably strong. A shark skeleton weighs less than an equivalent bony fish skeleton. It requires less metabolic investment to maintain. It allows a degree of whole-body flexibility, the ability to flex the spine laterally during swimming, that a bony skeleton would constrain. And it does not require the constant cellular maintenance that living bone tissue demands. A cartilaginous skeleton is, in metabolic terms, cheaper to run than a bony one. This matters for a predator that may go days or weeks between large meals. The shark's body is designed for the efficient management of episodic energy intake, long periods of relatively low activity punctuated by bursts of high-energy predation. The light skeleton, the efficient musculature, the lack of a swim bladder, compensated for by a large, oil-rich liver that provides neutral buoyancy, all contribute to a metabolic profile suited to this lifestyle. The liver itself is extraordinary. A shark's liver can account for up to 30% of its total body weight. It is filled with squalene, a hydrocarbon oil of very low density that provides lift, counteracting the negative buoyancy of the cartilaginous skeleton and dense muscle mass. The liver is simultaneously a buoyancy organ, an energy reserve, and, because squalene is a precursor for steroid hormones, a biochemical factory. It is one of the reasons sharks were hunted so intensively in the 20th century, before the ecological consequences became impossible to ignore. Squalane has commercial applications in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. The liver's size made it worth pursuing. The modern shark is not a museum piece. It is an animal in the full, vigorous present tense of evolution, hunting, sensing, reproducing, dying, and in some lineages still diversifying in ways that paleontologists are only beginning to document. To understand what 450 million years of refinement actually produces, we need to watch it in action. The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias, is perhaps the most studied large predator on Earth and still one of the least understood. It can reach 7 meters and approximately 2,000 kilograms. It is warm-blooded in a way that most fish are not. It maintains its core body temperature several degrees above the surrounding water through a heat exchange system called the rete mirabile, a countercurrent network of blood vessels in which warm blood leaving the muscles transfers heat to cool blood returning from the gills. This thermoregulation allows the great white to function efficiently in cold water where most large predatory fish would be lethargic. It can pursue prey in the frigid upwelling zones off South Africa, California, and southern Australia where cold water productivity concentrates its prey. The great white hunts seals and sea lions using a combination of sensory systems that operate in sequence as the predator closes the distance to its prey. At hundreds of meters, olfaction. The lateral olfactory system detects dissolved organic compounds, blood, oils, metabolic byproducts at concentrations measured in parts per billion. Not 1 part in a million. 1 part in a billion. The shark follows the scent gradient upflow, moving toward increasing concentration. At tens of meters, the lateral line detects the pressure waves generated by a swimming seal, the rhythmic disturbance in the water column created by the animal's movements. At meters, vision takes over, the large eyes providing a final targeting solution in the clear coastal waters of the hunting ground. In the final approach, in turbid water or at night, the ampullae of Lorenzini read the bioelectric field of the seal's musculature, providing a targeting signal that functions in absolute darkness, in mud-thick water, regardless of visibility. The attack itself, for a great white hunting Cape Fur seals off Seal Island in False Bay, South Africa, is one of the most dramatic predatory events in nature. The shark approaches from below and behind, from the dark water beneath the seal, where the seal's vision is least effective, where the shark's dark dorsal surface is camouflaged against the deep water below. It accelerates to speeds estimated at 40 kilometers per hour in the final charge, and strikes upward, reaching completely out of the water in the most extreme cases. A 2,000-kilogram animal becoming briefly airborne, seal in its jaws, both predator and prey suspended above the ocean's surface for a fraction of a second before gravity returns them to the water. The entire attack, from the moment the shark begins its final acceleration to the moment of impact, takes approximately 1 second. This is not a killing machine. It is a system of extraordinary precision, a convergence of sensory channels, hydrodynamic design, thermoregulation, and behavioral strategy accumulated over 45 million years of evolution from Mako ancestors. Every component has been tested and refined. Nothing is wasted. Deep beneath the hunting grounds of the great white, in a world that sunlight never reaches, the shark lineage is running an entirely different set of experiments. The deep ocean, below 200 meters, where photosynthesis cannot occur and the only light is bioluminescent, covers more than 60% of the Earth's surface. It is the largest habitable environment on the planet, and the sharks have been there for a very long time. The dwarf lantern shark, Etmopterus perryi, lives at depths of 300 to 500 meters in the Caribbean Sea. It is approximately 22 centimeters long, smaller than a human hand. Its entire ventral surface glows with bioluminescence, produced by photophores, light-producing cells embedded in the skin. In the permanent darkness of the mesopelagic zone, bioluminescence serves multiple functions: counter-illumination, which erases the shark's silhouette against the faint light from above, and makes it invisible to predators looking upward; communication with potential mates of the same species; and possibly prey attraction, luring small crustaceans and invertebrates toward the light source. The dwarf lantern shark is one of approximately 40 species of lantern shark currently recognized, all in the genus Etmopterus, all bioluminescent, all living in deep water, all representing one of the most species-rich deep-sea shark genera known. The Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus, lives in the cold, deep waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean, moving through water that hovers near freezing. It grows to approximately 5 meters. It moves slowly. Its metabolic rate is the lowest of any known shark, a consequence of its near-freezing habitat, and it lives extraordinarily long. Carbon dating of the lens tissue of Greenland shark eyes, tissue that is laid down in the embryonic stage and accumulates no new carbon after birth, making it a reliable chronological marker, has produced age estimates of up to 500 years for the largest individuals. The oldest individual measured in published research was estimated at 392 years, plus or minus 120 years. This means that a Greenland shark alive today may have been born before the Mayflower reached Plymouth. It may have been alive during the lifetime of Galileo. It is, by a wide margin, the longest-lived vertebrate known to science. 500 years of slow cruising through cold black water, eating whatever it encounters: fish, squid, seals, whale carcasses, fully mature at approximately 150 years, reproducing perhaps once per century. The Greenland shark is not a fast-evolving, rapidly reproducing generalist. It is the opposite: the slowest, most patient, most metabolically conservative shark alive. And it is critically threatened because an animal that takes 150 years to reach sexual maturity cannot sustain any significant mortality pressure from human fishing. And then there is the whale shark, Rhincodon typus, the largest fish in the ocean, up to 18 meters, potentially more in the largest unconfirmed individuals. It feeds by filter feeding, swimming slowly through warm surface waters with its enormous mouth open, straining krill, small fish, and fish eggs from the water through gill rakers. It is not an apex predator in any conventional sense. It is a grazer of the ocean's smallest organisms, and it is the same class as the great white, the same class as the Greenland shark, the same class as the dwarf lantern shark. One lineage, 450 million years. These four animals. The diversity of modern sharks is not a coincidence or a curiosity. It is the product of 500 million years of biological experimentation in which the core architecture, cartilage, denticles, replaceable teeth, ampullae of Lorenzini, was carried forward as a platform on which an extraordinary range of ecological strategies could be built. The platform is ancient. The strategies it supports range from the most aggressive open ocean apex predation to the most patient deep-sea scavenging to the most peaceable plankton filtering that a vertebrate jaw has ever been redirected toward. And this platform, this 500 million year old biological achievement, is now being dismantled at a rate that has no precedent in the geological record of the lineage. The practice of shark finning deserves to be described precisely because it is both the most visible symbol of the current crisis and one of its most direct causes. A shark is caught, often as targeted catch, sometimes as bycatch in long lines set for tuna or swordfish. Its fins, the dorsal fin, the pectoral fins, the lower lobe of the caudal fin, are removed. The shark, still alive, is returned to the ocean. A shark without fins cannot swim. It cannot maintain its position in the water column. It sinks to the seafloor, where it suffocates. Sharks require water moving over their gills to breathe, and a stationary shark on the seafloor is a drowning shark, or is eaten alive by other predators. The fins are dried and sold into the luxury food trade, primarily for shark fin soup, a status dish in certain cultures whose flavor comes entirely from the broth and the added ingredients, and not at all from the cartilaginous fin, which is essentially tasteless. The fin is not food, it is a symbol, and for that symbol, an estimated 73 million sharks are killed annually by finning alone. 73 million per year. The number is almost too large to hold, but it is precise. It is documented. It is the arithmetic of a practice applied to an animal that produces, depending on species, between 2 and perhaps 40 pups per reproductive cycle, reproduces once every 2 to 3 years or longer, and does not reach sexual maturity for a decade or more. The arithmetic does not balance. It has never balanced. It is a biological debt accumulating with compound interest, and the due date is arriving. And now, from the architecture of survival, we must arrive at the present. The present, which is the most dangerous moment in the 450 million year history of the shark lineage. The numbers are precise, and they are not good. Global shark populations have declined by more than 70% since 1970. Some species have declined by more than 90%. The oceanic white-tip shark, once described by Jacques Cousteau as the most abundant large animal on Earth, numbering in the hundreds of millions, has declined by more than 98% in the Gulf of Mexico alone. The hammerhead sharks, those extraordinary 23 million year old experiments in sensory engineering, are critically endangered across multiple species. The great white shark, the apex predator of the modern ocean, the animal that evolution spent 45 million years developing from a broad-toothed mako ancestor, is classified as vulnerable globally and locally, critically endangered in several regions. The cause is not a mass extinction event. There is no asteroid, no volcanic eruption, no catastrophic climate shift operating on the timescale of centuries. The cause is a combination of factors that are entirely within human control and entirely a result of human choices. Overfishing, the direct removal of sharks from the ocean at a rate far exceeding their reproductive capacity. Finning, the practice of removing shark fins for the luxury food trade and discarding the rest of the animal, alive but unable to swim, to drown in the ocean. Bycatch, the incidental capture of sharks in fishing gear targeting other species, killing animals that were not the intended prey and whose deaths are not counted in fisheries management statistics. Habitat degradation, the destruction of coastal and reef environments that serve as nursery grounds for juvenile sharks of many species. Sharks reproduce slowly. This is the biological constraint that makes the current rate of removal so catastrophic. A female great white shark reaches sexual maturity at approximately 15 years of age. She carries her pups for an estimated 12 to 18 months, the longest gestation of any shark, and produces perhaps 2 to 14 pups per litter. She may reproduce only once every 2 to 3 years. The population dynamics of a species with these reproductive characteristics cannot absorb the current rate of mortality and maintain stable population numbers. The mathematics are unambiguous. The arithmetic of reproduction does not balance against the arithmetic of removal. 450 million years, 5 mass extinctions. The end of the Permian, which killed 96% of marine life. The impact that ended the Cretaceous. All of them survived. And in 50 years, human activity has accomplished what none of those events could. This is the moment I want to sit with, because I think it contains something important. The shark is not interesting because it is dangerous. The great white shark kills, on average, fewer than 10 people per year worldwide. In the same period, humans kill approximately 100 million sharks. The asymmetry of this relationship is so extreme that the word predator, as applied to the shark in its relationship with humans, is simply the wrong word. 450 million years of adaptation prepared it for everything the planet could produce. It was not prepared for us. What is the shark's story in the end? It is a story about the difference between optimization and perfection. The shark was never perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect organism. There is only fit enough, flexible enough, durable enough to survive what the environment produces. The shark succeeded not because it was invincible, but because it was adaptable in the right ways, at the right times, at the right scales. Its cartilaginous skeleton was not the last word in vertebrate engineering. The bony fish, which diversified explosively in the Devonian and Carboniferous, produced a skeleton that proved more versatile for terrestrial life and eventually dominated. The shark remained in the water and refined its oceanic solution. Neither was better in absolute terms. Both were good enough for their context. The 5 mass extinctions tested the shark repeatedly. Each time, the lineage was reduced but not eliminated. Each time, the core architecture, the denticles, the jaw, the teeth, the sensory array, the cartilaginous skeleton, proved robust enough to carry at least some lineages through the bottleneck and out the other side. The shark did not survive 5 mass extinctions because it was lucky. It survived because the fundamental design was sound, because the ecological flexibility of the class was broad enough to find refuge in conditions that killed more specialized animals, and because the reproductive strategy, slow, yes, but with pups large enough to survive early life, produced offspring robust enough to rebuild populations from small founding groups. The 6th challenge is different. Not in its ultimate severity. The end-Permian was worse than anything we are currently producing. But in its speed and in its specificity, the end-Permian unfolded over hundreds of thousands of years. The current decline of global shark populations has happened in 50. The shark's adaptive toolkit was built for geological timescales. It cannot adapt to a world that changes in decades. I find in this story something that goes beyond biology. The shark is the oldest continuous vertebrate lineage we know. It is the thread that runs through everything, through the Ordovician oceans, through the Devonian forests of fish, through the Carboniferous Golden Age, through the end-Permian catastrophe, through the Mesozoic when marine reptiles competed with it for dominance, through the age of Megalodon, through the Pliocene cooling, through the ice ages, through the entire history of the vertebrate body plan. The shark was there before there were trees. It was there before there were insects. It was there before anything with 4 legs had touched the land. That continuity matters, not sentimentally, not because ancient things deserve preservation simply for being ancient, but because the shark is a functional component of the ocean ecosystem in ways that we do not fully understand and cannot easily replace. Apex predators regulate the trophic structure of the ecosystems they inhabit. They determine, through the predation pressure they apply and the fear they create, the behavior, distribution, and population dynamics of every species below them in the food web. Remove the apex predator and the ecosystem does not simply lose one species. It reorganizes, often in ways that are less productive, less stable, and less resilient. We have seen this in terrestrial ecosystems where large predators were eliminated. We are beginning to see it in marine ecosystems where shark populations have collapsed. The ocean without sharks is not simply an ocean with fewer sharks. It is a different ocean. And we do not know with confidence what that ocean looks like in the long run. We have never seen it. In 450 million years, it has never existed. That is the story of the shark. It begins with a microscopic denticle in Ordovician sandstone and ends, if we allow it to end, with the collapse of the oldest vertebrate lineage on Earth within a single human lifetime. Between those 2 points, 500 million years of biology, survival, adaptation, and the patient, Relentless testing of an elegant design against every catastrophe the planet could produce. The design held every time. The question now is whether it will hold against us.